To rise in America in a matter of a year and a half to become the most well-known, most photographed, most talked about person probably in the history of the world. Barack Hussein Obama is not the Antichrist because he does not fit the description. But he certainly fits the pattern of how media and the powers that be behind the scenes can groom an individual and have him represent them, and arise out of nowhere in an incredibly short period of time. Previous to, I'd say, 2000, it's almost inconceivable that someone could rise so fast to become so popular and so well known. Even among people that don't like him, they know him. They know more about him than they ever knew about another presidential candidate. So we have a pattern here, but he's not the one. I'll tell you why. This man is going to rise out of Europe and the Mediterranean, the revived Roman Empire. He is the prince that arises and rules the people that destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. That's not America. Furthermore, although not everyone in prophecy agrees with me, I believe the indications are very strong that he's going to be a Jew. Let me explain why, and it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. I'd walk through fire to save Israel. I love them. I love Jews. I have friends all over the world. But let me tell you that what matters is not your opinion, but rather what Scripture suggests or declares. Daniel describes the Antichrist as one who has no regard for the God of his fathers. That expression is used 7 times in the Bible, and every one of the other 6 times it is used exclusively of a Jew. Imagine if this guy was a pagan, grows up as a pagan, some non-Christian religion, non-Jewish religion, and let's say he's a Hindu, Buddhist, whatever, and he rejects the Buddhist or Hindu or whatever God of his fathers. Who cares? But if he's a Jew and he rejects Jehovah, then it's worth commenting upon, isn't it? There are other strong indications. For example, in Revelation 13, we're told that the false prophet, the second beast, rises out of the earth, which is almost always used exclusively as a symbol of Israel. Furthermore, in Revelation 13, we find that this false prophet does something very unusual. He brings fire down from heaven in the sight of men and thereby confuses and deceives men that they will worship the Antichrist, he that had the wound by the sword and yet lives. Who in the Bible brought fire down from heaven? Elijah. The only one, right? Do you know the Jews are looking for Elijah even more in a sense, but certainly first before the Messiah? Because Malachi said that Elijah the prophet would appear before the great and terrible day of the Lord, and that he would turn the hearts of the children to the fathers and the fathers to the children. There are more legends about Elijah and traditions in Ginsburg's 7-volume Legends of the Jews than there are about the Messiah, by a long shot. They put out a wine cup for Elijah at Passover in Orthodox homes. They leave out a window or door ajar for Elijah to come in the hope that he will come this Passover. This man, I believe, is going to call himself Elijah. He's going to pretend that he's one of the 2 witnesses as we describe it. It's not as clear in the Old Testament with the 2 olive trees, but if you look carefully, you can see it. And since it's clear in Malachi that Elijah is one of the 2 witnesses, and the very next verse, the verse just before it, talks about Moses. You read that last chapter of Malachi and ask yourself, what in the world is Moses doing there when it's talking about Elijah returning at the end of days, unless Moses is the other witness? I'm not dogmatic about it, I just think it's probable. The other one is often suggested, Enoch. The only reason people think Enoch is generally because he didn't die. And then they point to Hebrews 9:27 and say it's appointed unto man once to die, and after death the judgment. So since Enoch didn't die, and since Elijah didn't die, and since Elijah's coming back and then he will die as one of the two witnesses and then be resurrected, then it makes sense that Enoch would be the one. But the misunderstanding is Enoch wasn't a Jew. Secondly, that statement in Hebrews 9:27, it's appointed unto man once to die, is not a universal absolute statement without exception. There's a number of people that have died twice, including Lazarus, including all those people who were raised in the Old Testament. They later died. If you're in the generation of the rapture, which I believe we are, most of us in this room are not going to die. So Hebrews 9:27 doesn't require that we all die. It doesn't require that Enoch come back to sort of make the balance right. Whereas Moses appeared with Elijah on the Mount of Transfiguration, testifying to Jesus, both the law and the prophets. I just give you that for thought. I mean, it's not anything worth fighting about at all, but I think it's something to consider. Daniel was given a vision, not only of the first coming of Jesus to the very day when he'd be cut off, and hence, logically, when he'd be born. But Daniel 26 and 27, dealing with the 7-year covenant. While we do not know when the 7-year treaty begins, I and many others here are convinced, for a whole lot of reasons that I won't get into, that we will be raptured at some point before that. Could be the day before, as Charles Larkin and many diagrams show, but I don't think that's probable. I think we may well see the Antichrist. We won't be sure until he signs the treaty, at which point we're already in heaven. It'll be academic. But I think it's very probable that there'll be many wise Christians who will say, you know, this guy has all the characteristics. But because this false prophet will take the name Elijah, I believe, and pretend to be Elijah, bringing fire down from heaven, I think it's logical that the Messiah will also be a Jew. Openly a Jew. Not someone like Prince Charles or someone else whose great ancestor, King Baldwin of Jerusalem, they think makes him a candidate. No, remember that Jesus said, he warned them of false messiahs. He said that they say he's in the desert, don't go. If they say he's in the closet, don't go. Why would Jesus warn his Jewish disciples, and hence the Jews of the future, to not accept this false Messiah unless that guy is going to present himself as a Messiah? Now, I've talked to many rabbis, and I've talked to Rabbi Law, chief rabbi of Israel, a couple of years ago. They rotate every few years. He's out of office at the moment. And I asked him, is it even conceivable that any Jews would ever accept a Gentile as the Messiah? He just laughed. He said, not anyone outside an insane asylum. So I submit that evidence, and there is more, does suggest that he will be Jewish. But that he'll come out of Europe or the Mediterranean. Remember, the Roman Empire was not just Western Europe. It included the area of Turkey. It included part of the area up to the Caspian, around the Black Sea. It included Israel, Syria, Iraq. It included all of North Africa. So it's not just that this guy has to be a European. He's going to be an economic genius. He's going to be a Marxist socialist. Daniel says he divides the land for gain. Remember Joe the plumber? It's going to be like that. Redistribute your wealth. But again, it won't be that man. He, by his policy, Daniel says, causes the economy or craft to prosper. He's going to come in, I believe, in a worldwide economic disaster. And he's going to be the most brilliant economic genius we've ever seen. He's going to have solutions that Roosevelt and no one else had. And he's going to bring about prosperity, at least for a time, until we get right into the tribulation.